The lights of the city pulsed far below him, but Adrian Cole barely noticed. His hands rested on the cold edge of the conference table as he stared at the unsigned divorce papers. Today was supposed to be simple. End the past, clear the last emotional debt, and finally close the chapter that had followed him like a shadow for 2 long years. The millionaire businessman, known for decisive moves and perfect timing, felt strangely uneasy. His assistant had said his ex-wife was on the way up, but something in her voice hinted at more. The elevator chimed. Adrian kept his back turned, steadying his breath the way he did before announcing major deals. He expected quiet footsteps and polite greetings. But what he heard instead was a soft rattle of wheels, a tiny giggle and a whispered hush. His heartbeat stumbled. When he turned, the world seemed to tilt. Ilara stood there, calmer, stronger, her eyes holding a story he hadn't been invited to hear. And beside her, a stroller. Not one baby. Two small faces with familiar dimples, curious eyes, and the same dark hair he saw in his reflection. Time stopped. The papers on the table blurred. Adrian tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't move. The twins stared at him with innocent certainty, as if they had been waiting for this moment since birth. Ilara didn't explain. She didn't need to. Her quiet gaze said everything. He had come to end a marriage. Instead, he had opened a door to a truth that rewrote his entire life. Adrian stepped closer, his breath unsteady, as if he were walking toward the edge of a truth he wasn't ready to face. One of the twins, a boy with a tiny curl resting on his forehead, stretched his hand toward him. The gesture was small, innocent, yet it shattered something deep in Adrian's chest. How old are they?" he finally managed. Ilara's fingers tightened on the stroller handle. 2 years and 5 months. His throat tightened. The timing echoed inside his mind like a slow, heavy drum. He knew exactly what that meant. She had been expecting when they separated. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out softer than he intended, almost pleading. Ilara let out a long breath, the kind someone releases after carrying weight alone for too long. "I tried," she said. "I called. I wrote. I even came to your office once. But your meetings were always more important." Adrian winced. Back then he was drowning in expansion plans, negotiations and deadlines. He had told himself the distance would make the divorce easier. Maybe he thought ignoring her calls would make the pain fade faster. Now he saw what it had cost. The little girl in the stroller, smaller than her brother with bright, curious eyes, let out a soft sound. Ilara lifted her gently, cradling her close. "They were born early," she whispered. "It was a hard start. But they fought. Every day." Adrian's world tilted again. While he spoke on stages, closed deals, and built his empire, she had been fighting for 2 tiny lives alone. He lowered himself to the stroller, letting the boy take his finger. The child's grip was firm, trusting. A warmth spread through Adrian's chest, strange, overwhelming, and terrifying. He looked up at Ilara. "I missed everything," he said quietly. Her eyes softened, but there was a storm behind them. "You missed their first words, their first steps, their first dreams. But you don't have to miss everything." Adrian felt something shift inside him. A promise, a fear, a beginning he hadn't expected. And before he could respond, Ilara whispered, "There's more you need to know." Adrian's pulse quickened as Ilara's words hovered in the air. "There's more you need to know." She shifted slightly, the twins now calm in their seats, unaware of the storm swirling around the adults. Ilara's eyes glistened, not with anger but with a truth she had carried too long. "When they were born," she began, "the doctors weren't sure they would make it. They were so small, so fragile. I spent weeks sleeping in a chair beside their beds." Adrian swallowed hard, imagining her alone in a cold hospital room while he was celebrating another business achievement across the world. "Why didn't you tell someone?" he asked, voice cracking. "Your family, my assistant, anyone?" Ilara shook her head. "Your assistant refused every call. And your father, he said you were focused. That you didn't need distractions." Adrian froze. His father. The man who always urged him to push harder, aim higher, avoid anything that slowed progress. A new thought flickered in Adrian's mind, sharp and unsettling. "Ilara," he whispered, stepping closer, "did someone tell you not to reach me?" She looked at him for a long moment, hesitation trembling at the edge of her lips. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes. Someone made sure your world stayed quiet." The room spun. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was something deeper, controlled, hidden. And as the twins stared up at him with trusting eyes, Adrian realized he was only beginning to uncover the truth that had torn their family apart. Adrian felt the air leave his lungs as Alara's quiet confession settled between them. Someone made sure your world stayed quiet. He sank slowly into the nearest chair, the weight of those words heavier than any corporate loss he had ever faced. Who was it? He asked, though part of him already feared the answer. Alara didn't speak at first. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small stack of unopened envelopes, each one addressed to him, each one marked return to sender. She set them gently on the table. I tried every way I could, she said softly. But every letter came back. Every call ended before it began. Adrian picked up one envelope with trembling fingers. He recognized the handwriting. Her handwriting. He remembered the week this was dated, a week he had been guided into a whirlwind of meetings by someone he trusted completely. The truth struck him like a cold blade. My father, he whispered. It wasn't a question. Alara's silence was confirmation. The twins stirred, sensing tension, and Alara instinctively rocked the stroller. Adrian stood abruptly, pacing, mind racing through every moment he had been encouraged to focus, every time he was told Alara was better off without distractions. A slow realization crept into his voice. He didn't just push me away from you, he kept me from them. Alara's eyes were sad but steady. I never wanted to blame anyone. I only wanted you to know the truth when you were ready. Adrian stopped in his tracks. Ready. The word echoed. Because now he wasn't just hurt, he was determined. Alara, he said, voice firm but filled with emotion, I won't let anyone control what happens next. But before she could answer, the elevator chimed again, quick, sharp, urgent. Someone else had arrived. And Adrian had a sinking feeling he knew exactly who it was. The elevator doors slid open, and Adrian's heart sank as his father, Edward Cole, stepped inside, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp with authority. Edward's presence filled the room instantly, commanding, unyielding, the same force that had shaped Adrian's life and decisions. So this is where you've been hiding, Edward said coolly, his gaze flickering to the twins. For a moment, silence stretched thick between them, broken only by the soft coos from the stroller. Adrian felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him. They're my children, he said firmly. Edward's lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. You didn't know, did you? That's what I wanted. Adrian's jaw tightened. The man who had built an empire on control was trying to control the one thing Adrian now wanted most. His family. Alara stood, calm but resolute, meeting Edward's gaze without flinching. You kept him away, she said quietly. Kept them away. Edward's expression hardened, but before he could reply, Adrian interrupted. This ends today. No more secrets, no more lies. The weight of years hung heavy, but Adrian's voice carried something new, hope, courage, and a fierce determination to reclaim what had been lost. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Adrian was ready to fight for his children, and for the family he had almost lost forever. Adrian took a deep breath, feeling the surge of emotions that had been buried for so long. The man who once defined success by wealth and power now saw a different meaning: family. He looked down at Mason and Sophia, their innocent faces full of trust and hope, and made a silent vow. I will be there, he promised, voice steady but filled with emotion. Alara's eyes softened, a fragile smile breaking through the years of pain. Together they had weathered storms they never imagined, but now a new chapter was beginning, one built on honesty, healing, and love. Adrian knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust, balancing business and fatherhood, facing his past head-on, all would test him like never before. But for the first time in years he felt a fire inside that no deal or empire could ignite. This was his real legacy. As the sun set over the city skyline, Adrian reached out, taking Alara's hand gently. The divorce papers still sat on the desk, untouched. Today they were no longer the end, but the start of something extraordinary. A family reunited against all odds.